On this episode of the CHGO Cubs podcast, we are breaking down every single Chicago Cubs spring training trend. We also have a mailbag episode in which we answer dozens of questions submitted regarding the pressing questions. We get into it on this episode of the CHGO Cubs podcast. This is the CHGO Cubs podcast. You're seeing my face only. Why? Corey's not here today. Though we have a jam-packed episode. We have a complete breakdown of the current state of spring training. The Japanese opening day series is right around the corner. They're going to Japan next week. So what I want to do for the first 15 minutes is break down in detail where the depth chart stands on the pitching side and also on the hitting side. That will make up the first 15 minutes. The remaining 45 minutes, mailbag episode. I submitted a question out on Twitter and in our Die Hard Discord to send me questions that we can answer on this show. The questions I received, some of you guys are psychos out there, okay? You got to get a life. A level of detail in these questions is unbelievable. I've been spending the last hour and a half doing homework trying to answer these questions. I haven't done homework like this since I was in junior high, okay? So I appreciate your questions, but the detail is too much. You can come on the show, you can answer them yourself. Okay. This show is also sponsored by Toyota. The winter can be brutal, but Toyota helps make it easier. So bring the action, and Toyota will bring the traction. Toyota, let's go places. So let's get into it. First, we have about 5 days, maybe less, before the Cubs decide who is on that Japanese opening day roster. So right now is Friday, March 7th. It's important to timestamp these episodes because you never know what's going to happen. Maybe they go out and make a signing. Maybe a decision's made ahead of this Japanese series. So it's important to timestamp this before you listen to another Cubs show the following Monday. What I want to do first is show the positional depth chart and talk about which guys are at the back end fringe of making the team. And I want to highlight those players who have minor league options. For the Japanese series, those, I believe, will be the driving factors for Craig Counsell making his decisions. Then we'll also talk about the domestic opening day series and what Craig Counsell may be looking for to make those decisions. We'll also do that for the pitching side as well, and then we'll get into the mailbag questions afterwards. So if you're listening to this on the Apple feed or the Spotify feed or wherever you listen to these podcasts, come on over to YouTube. I got a massive camera on my face right now, a little self-conscious looking at this. It's like looking straight into the mirror for 60 straight minutes. Look what Corey's done to me. So I'm going to show this graph. It's going to show the depth chart before and after opening day. Okay. So on the left, it's the Japanese series potential guys to make the roster. In gray are the locks. These are the staples. Dansby Swanson, number 1. Ian Happ, Kyle Tucker, PCA, Seiya Suzuki, Michael Busch, Justin Turner, Miguel Amaya, Carson Kelly, John Birdie. 10 guys right there. And yes, I did count them on my fingers because I lose track. Those are 10 guys. Now in yellow are possibly how the front office and management is viewing the Japanese opening day series. In yellow is Vidal Brujan, number 11, Gage Workman, number 12, and Travis Jankowski, number 13. Notice I did not say Matt Shaw, nor did I say Kevin Alcantara. So the reason that those three in yellow, Brujan, Workman, and Jankowski, may make up the last three is because they don't have options left. So should they make the roster, and let's say Craig Counsell now wants to bring Matt Shaw up, or Nico Horner comes back healthy, well, they will not have those guys after the Japanese series if they ultimately decide to make those decisions. That means for Bruhan, Workman, and Jankowski, they may make the opening day Japanese roster just so the coaches and the front office get more time to make an informed decision. That means Matt Shaw, although he says he's 100% healthy and has played in spring training games as of the last few days, that means they may want to ensure he's ready to go, which means he may not make that Japanese series. Those will be the decisions had. And then once you get back stateside, and should they actually keep Bruhan, Workman, and Jankowski in camp, then they can determine, okay, well, should we keep Bruhan? Or should we keep Workman? Or do we want to keep another outfielder in Jankowski? Because how do we feel about Kevin Alcantara's development? Or maybe they want to carry a third catcher to start for some reason, although I doubt that happens, but Reese McGuire is there. And then lastly, Nicky Lopez is in camp. Nicky Lopez, high contact guy, can move across the infield diamond, sort of like Bruhan. He's an option as well. Those decisions will be made before the domestic opening day series roster. Now let's look at that roster. So in addition to those 10 guys I talked about, we need to insert Nico Horner back into that list because maybe, hopefully, his flexin, I got Chris Flexen on my mind, his flexor tendon strain, or tear rather, may be healthy. And so he makes up number 11 on this depth chart, meaning there's 2 guys left to fill out those 2 spots. Matt Shaw, I believe, as everyone else does, he'll be the guy to make number 12. So now you have 1 guy left to make the opening day roster. Is it Gage Workman? Is it Vidal Bruhan? Is it Reese McGuire? Is it Kevin Alcantara? Is it Nicky Lopez? We'll see what happens. I believe, given what we've seen so far, I don't think it's really crystal clear. I do believe, though, that if Nico is healthy and if Dansby Swanson's also healthy, they would default to Gage Workman at third base just to give Matt Shaw an option, as well as Justin Turner an option at third base in addition to John Birdie. Then again, if Nico and Dansby's health is still not 100%, and I say Dansby's health in addition to Nico, just because he just had core surgery, or maybe they want to start him a little bit slower. If that happens, they may want someone more dynamic on the roster, meaning Vidal Bruhan, because he can play second, shortstop, and third base, he may just get that nod over Gage Workman. Both have performed very well this spring training. They're both hitting the ball hard in about 3 dozen plate appearances. Their stats in spring training look similar. We have Vidal Bruhan hopping like Sammy Sosa on deep fly ball home runs to left field. A lot of information, a lot of hard decisions for the back end of the roster, but I believe, given what we've seen so far and how they've brought back Shaw at this pace and how Nico's on the IL and how Travis Jankowski is brought in, I think they're going to start with those guys in Japan and then give them more time to figure out the remaining back end 3, or rather 2, of the domestic opening day series. Now let's look at the pitching. Got to catch my breath over here. The pitching is just a mountain of possibilities, okay? So let's do the same exercise. On the left, we have 8 locks. These guys are in gray. Number 1, of course, Justin Steele, Shota Imanaga, Matthew Boyd, Jamison Tyone, Ryan Presley, Colin Ray, Ryan Brazier, Caleb Thielbar. 8 guys right there. In yellow, to make up the remaining 13, are 5 pitchers without options. That's why you see a red box that says no in a column called options. They cannot be sent down. They must be DFA'd. They include Julian Merriweather, Tyson Miller, maybe Chris Flexen, Brad Keller. A lot of hype this spring training about Brad Keller, and Keegan Thompson. The same thought experiment can be applied to the pitching in the form that you don't want to shallow your depth by bringing up guys for Japan without options. Notice, I did not say Ben Brown. I did not say Jordan Wicks. I did not say Nate Pearson. I did not even say Eli Morgan, whom they traded early in the offseason who's going to make $1 million. I did not say Cody Poteet, who was traded for Cody Bellinger. The reason for not saying those names, purely motivated because they have minor league options, which means they're depth, which means they're extra lottery tickets. The Cubs bullpen is a lottery ticket, as is most Major League bullpens. You want to give your team the best chance to eat innings and pitch not just eating innings, but good innings. And I think by not starting with those guys, including Eli Morgan, the Cubs do themselves a service in evaluating Keegan Thompson more, evaluating Brad Keller more, evaluating Tyson Miller more, and even Julian Merriweather more, despite his 2023 success. Okay, so now let's go over to the right side, domestic opening day depth chart. So the top 8 still stand. Let's do the exercise for the remaining 5. Let's just say Julian Merriweather looks like his 2023 self or similar to his 2023 self. The velocity's there, the tight sliders there. Let's give him number 9. Tyson Miller, let's say he looks pretty similar to last season, in which he was one of the most successful Cubs relievers. He's number 10. Here's a decision the Cubs will have to make. Do they want to fill number 11, number 12, and number 13 with guys who have options? Eli Morgan has an option. Jordan Wicks has an option. Ben Brown has an option. The argument is that those 3 guys are the best pitchers on this roster, the top 13 best pitchers. Then again, it is about depth. So if you keep Wicks on the roster and Brown on the roster, you subtract Ethan Roberts, you subtract Brad Keller, Keegan Thompson, Chris Flexen, perhaps, starting pitching option, perhaps. Do they want to start the season by lowering their depth and accepting some long-term in June, July, and August, some inflexibility by not having those options? Or do they want to risk not having their best 13 arms on the opening day roster stateside so that they ensure there's more opportunities for pitchers if guys get injured in April, May, and June? Of course, the risk is, well, you want to get outs. You want to win these games in April and May. And so if you don't have Ben Brown in the bullpen, well, your bullpen has a worse shot at winning games. And that is the decision that they're going to have to make, right? And they have about 3 more weeks to make this decision. It's a lot of time. My preference, I don't really have a strong one right now. I need to think about it a little bit more, but I'm so jaded by the May bullpen last year and the June bullpen. And just before we hit our first ad break, in recent memory, watching the Cubs bullpen early on last season and those constant 1-run games day in and day out was exhausting. Truth be told, that was one of the most exhausting seasons I've watched. And we've watched a lot of exhausting seasons, but just the constant 1-run games and the offensive anemia at times without the power. It was brutal. So I'm jaded because of that. And I'm almost wanting to just at the start in the first week or two, just ensure that by May, if there's injuries again, which by the way, Javier Assad injured, right? If there's injuries again, they can just withstand some of those injuries and still provide valuable innings. Okay, so those are the 2 depth charts. That paints a picture of where the discussion will go. And before this ad break, we'll just lay out the remaining last 45 minutes. I have about 30 questions. So I put out just a little tweet this morning and calling our diehard Discords, sending questions about trends you're seeing, about questions you want answered, whatever is on your mind, whatever is on your heart. What are you worried about? What are you excited about? Got a flurry of questions. I did my homework for again, hour and a half. I'm exhausted. This is I feel like I'm in school again, trying to look all this stuff up. But let's go ahead, take our first ad break, come back out, start those questions, and get into it. Okay. First sponsor is Chevy. Auto deals are going on now at Ray Chevrolet in Fox Lake. That means the latest vehicles you've been looking for are now priced with huge auto show savings, like $11,000 off MSRP on new Chevy models. Check out their selection of over 120 vehicles priced under $20,000. With one of Chicagoland's largest Chevy inventories, you're sure to find the perfect vehicle for you. Go see for yourself. Visit our partner all month long on Route 12 in Fox Lake. And don't miss out on their auto show sales event going on this month. Be the star of the show and take $11,000 off MSRP today by shopping Ray Chevrolet in Fox Lake or raychevrolet.com. They've been serving the community since 1963. Together, let's drive. Timeline sells health longevity supplements featuring their proprietary Mito Pure ingredient. Mito Pure works with the cells in your body to help reverse age-related decline. Benefits include increased strength, energy, and endurance. Get ready to be your best, most energized, most revitalized you. So right now, Timeline is giving you 10% off your order of MitoPure. Go to timeline.com/CHGO today to get started. That's timeline.com/CHGO. Okay. I need to catch my breath over here. What is it? It's been 16 minutes. I'm losing myself. Let's get into it. Mailbag time. Okay. So, snapshot. These questions talk about the prospects. They talk about Owen Casey, Kevin Alcantara, Matt Shaw, James Triantos, including PCA. They talk about the concerns in the pitching. They talk about the makeup of the pitchers. Do we have enough strikeout guys? Do we have enough lefties in the bullpen? It also talks about the middle to the back end of the order. Do we have enough firepower after Happ, Tucker, and Seiya? Also talks about just the depth getting through 160 games. Do we have enough stamina? That way, when September comes, we're not biting our nails like we did in 2023. And do we have enough up front so that April, May, and June of 2024 doesn't happen again? So this will be the bulk sum of this discussion, and keep and pay attention to the back end of the roster. Again, Vidal Brujan, Gage Workman, and those guys, as well as some of the emerging trends from the pitchers, including Brad Keller and the starting pitching staff, Matthew Boyd, Ben Brown as an option, and so on. So let's get into it. First question from a longtime listener, Cubby Steph at Cubby Steph. What's your guess on our starting rotation? Will Benjamin Brown be in the mix? I like the name Benjamin Brown. I don't think Ben Brown will get the first nod in the rotation. I would like him to get as many innings as possible. I think the way Craig Counsell talks is agnostic. That would be the key word I describe Craig. He's fluid. He looks at the situations. He does not make decisions unless that requires urgency. And right now on March 7th, there's no reason to make that decision, especially for someone who had this weird neck injury, which, by the way, it sounds like he's 100%, which is awesome. It was like a benign tumor. It's like the weirdest stuff. It's just bizarre. But I think what will happen with Ben Brown is, number one, show that he's healthy in a highly competitive environment. Spring is competitive, don't get me wrong, but highly competitive game action environment. That may be in the form of AAA starting. It also may be in the form of the bullpen at the big league level and getting high leverage innings, let's say in the 6th, 7th, 8th innings, just to see if the day-to-day operations hold up for his neck. Also, too, he's a 2-pitch guy. So he has a great, four-seam fastball and that death ball, sharp breaking pitch that goes straight down. But maybe they want to use this opportunity to develop another pitch. These are all the questions that Craig will be weighing over the next 3 weeks. So I don't think he's going to be in the starting rotation. Again, just to show that depth chart again, here is the top 5 in the rotation. It's Steele, Imanaga, Boyd, Tyone, and then probably Colin Ray, I would imagine. That's probably what we're going to see to start. Again, unless they want to option or rather DFA someone like Brad Keller or Keegan Thompson. And I think what will happen, Cubby stuff, is that they're going to give someone who has a high ceiling a shot, but that high ceiling guy is going to be someone without options. And I think Brad Keller, everything we've heard about Brad Keller so far is encouraging. He's throwing 96, 97, no options, has a precedence of eating innings, number one, in 2018 with the Royals. And number two, he has stuff. He has very unique stuff, which we'll get into later on in this episode. All right, second question. Fave MLB player name at Fave MLB name. Honestly, probably our longest listener. 2015, I think. We've been getting tweets. Maybe our best friend, honestly, of the show. Question is, who do you expect to regress this year? How confident are you about the catching options? Okay. Regress is a strong word. It can mean two things. One is in the form of statistical regression, and that's, I roll my eyes saying that, but that means that someone outperformed their peripherals last year, and in a larger sample, or rather in more games, do those traits lend to less offensive output? Probably Bush. The BABIP was higher, but with Bush, he's weird because the whiffs don't match the power output. You want someone with 25 to 30 home runs if they make below league average contact. And with Michael Bush, he made just under 75% contact, and the major league average is around 76 to 77%. So for Bush, he would need to rely on squaring the ball up at favorable planes to get base hits, similar to what we saw with Cody Bellinger. That's a trait that is hard to project. It's not as if he can't do it or if it's not a skill set. It's just hard to say, especially for a rookie. So if we're going to look at the roster and try to guess who is most likely to regress, you would start with the outlier guys. And Bush is, in this group, one of those guys who don't quite make sense. Doesn't mean you're not optimistic about him. Doesn't mean that he can't make improvements. I think he made outstanding improvements defensively. I also think he made pretty good improvements offensively towards the back month of last year. So I say this with some caution and the assumption that he doesn't improve mechanically, talent-wise, or just mentally. And I think just given what we've seen, he has a high capacity to improve that way. Now for the catching situation, honestly, I'm not really confident in the catching situation. Confidence for me is in the form of our middle infield. High projection for value. Floors with wins above replacement of 3 in Dansby Swanson and Nico Horner. The floor for Miguel Amaya is replacement level, just given the extreme value he had to start the season, and as well as for Kelly. Now, Kelly had a 99 WRC plus last year. His career rate is 85. Kelly, although he's not as old as Yan Gomes, you just never know with catchers, but offensively, you have to project below league average offense for those two guys. It does not discount what we saw from Miguel Amaya. Miguel Amaya, after the All-Star break last year, we saw the dramatic mechanical change. He got rid of his leg stride and simply did the Albert Pujols. Now go back to Albert Pujols in the mid-2000s. He just lifts his toe up like that and stays balanced. Miguel Amaya did the same thing, and what preceded for Miguel Amaya was very interesting. So here's a graph of his average swing length. There's many different interpretations of swing length. You can interpret it as conviction with your swing. You can interpret it as a mechanical flaw. You can interpret it as an injury. Now, in red is Nico Horner's swing length, okay? See how it's stable? It's just a red horizontal line throughout the season. Nico's Nico. This is what makes Major League Baseball players so good, is their consistency. Now, if you look at Miguel Amaya, you see that he dips, his swing length gets shorter, much shorter, by about 4 inches shorter than Nico Horner's swing in July. That, to me, when I matched that with the visuals watching him play, was representing lack of conviction. Now, that swing length skyrockets up from 6.2 feet early in July upwards to almost 7 feet in September. That's conviction. That's being confident in your mechanics. Should that continue, he could be an average offensive guy. Now, you want to see the defensive value match that. Some of the concerns with this throwing was off-putting last year, but hopefully he can improve on that. Young guy, did not have much, basically any professional experience because of an injury-riddled developmental plan and COVID. Hopefully he develops. But my confidence, you can't say he's confident. I can't say they're confident, but I can be intrigued, and I think it could work out. All right, from also a longtime listener, one of our best friends of the show, Brent Stewart, at Brent Stewart 17. What are your guys' predictions for the players, position players on the 26-man? Is there more upside with Workman or Brujan? And should that put them over rather than going with the reliability of Lopez? Listen, Brent, you know me for a long time. I love defense, right? So I look at Gage Workman. I see how scouts have graded his defense as a 70 out of 80, and that just piques my interest. The concern is he has not hit over AA, has not played over AA. Can the bat balance his likely defensive value? That's the question. Is the bat so bad that the defensive value doesn't hold up? For Brujan, he has had no success at the big league level, replacement level, and then worse, negative WAR value. The advantage he has over Workman is that he plays second base, shortstop, third base. Now, Workman does play some shortstop, but Brujan, a little bit more athletic, and it's specifically the big advantage is speed. He's faster than Workman. So the conversation correct counsel and the coaches will have is, what is the likelihood you get value from Brujan's speed versus Workman's defense? Can Brujan be a late inning replacement for a pinch runner that goes and plays defense? Is Gage Workman best served as a depth piece option should Matt Shaw struggle and you need a high floor in defensive value and risking some of the offensive hiccups along the way? I would bet that Workman is going to get the first shot, but it's kind of a 50-50 toss-up right now. Okay. Also a friend of the show who's been on the show, one of my favorite Twitter followers, Alex Pats at ShyFanPat2. Are there too many fly balls in the starting pitching staff? This is a great question. So, Alex, the way I interpret this question is, do the Cubs give up too many fly balls, and are they at the will of randomness? Could this not work in their favor if Wrigley's conditions reverse and the wind's blowing out and their fly balls tend to then go for home runs, whereas in 2024, the wind was blowing in unorthodoxly for most of the year? I don't know if they have too many fly ball guys. It's hard to say. They get outs, right? They have the capacity to get outs. If the conditions normalize at Wrigley and they're giving up fly balls, then yeah, you can look at Shota's fly ball rate and be a little concerned, but I don't think you can confidently say one way or another that it's a problem. Doesn't mean you're not concerned about it, but also I don't think the concern is necessarily justified right now just because the range of outcomes is so wide. So you can't be optimistic nor can be pessimistic. It's a trait that they have and one that they've had success with for multiple seasons. We'll see. Okay. Another question here from Niran23 at Niran23. I believe the Cubs are not built for 162. They are built to be good for 90 to 100 games. They need more, either from internal performances or external trades. What do you think? I agree. I don't know if it's going to be a timing thing where they're really good for 90 games, they fizzle out. I just think their projections speak to the uncertainty of their back-end depth guys. So, for instance, Fangraphs has them about 85 wins in projections. Pacoda has them about 91 wins. That's a wide range. And any time you're within 85 to 90, truth be told, I don't really think it's that much different. For me, when I look at projections, I do plus or minus 7 wins. And that's half a standard deviation away from where most teams land. So for instance, if you're projected as a 90-win team, well, most of the league's going to fall between 83 wins and then 97 wins. Now, if you want to get a little crazy, one standard deviation is about 14 wins. And again, this is just the craziness of baseball, where 10 of 30 teams will actually out project their wins by 14 games. It's insane. So when you're in this 90 territory, you're in no man's land. And for them, I think it is because of the depth issues. So I'm concerned about Justice Steele and Shota Imanaga anchoring the staff, but both of them have never pitched over 175 innings. I don't quite like that, but then again, pitching across the league is trending in that direction. So the Cubs share many of the same limitations that other rotations share. And you look at the Dodgers last season, they won the World Series with a makeshift starting rotation in the World Series, fixing it at the deadline, using bullpen games. It's a weird time in baseball, and I'm just kind of like observing it without drawing too many conclusions. But yeah, the lack of stamina for some of the pitching does somewhat give me Yanks, but I don't know how much validity I have with that. But let's take our second ad break, finish off some of these questions. We're about a third of the way through the questions. I think we'll get there. I'm going to have a gallon of water after this. I haven't talked this much. Long time. All right. I could have a gallon of Boston beer right now. Light beer just got better. Introducing Sam Adams American Light. It's clean, crisp, and super easy to drink. No gimmicks, no fluff. Sam Adams American Light is not your average light beer. It's brewed with 100% American-sourced ingredients from local independent farmers. Light beer that's made right. Let's say Cubs start winning a lot of games. You want to do a beer bat chug with our good friend Cody Delmendo? Well, this is a beer to do a beer bat chug. Light beer should not feel like a compromise. An American classic so smooth, you'll want to crack open another one. Light beer just got better. Grab some Sam Adams American Light, available now at select Chicago retailers. Must be 21 and drink responsibly. Mando, whole body deodorant, safe to use anywhere on your body, is created by a doctor who saw firsthand how normal BO was being misdiagnosed and mistreated. You can use whole body deodorant, Mando, literally anywhere. Yes, anywhere. Choose from a variety of fresh scents like bourbon leather, clover woods, Mount Fuji, or Pro Sport. It is clinically proven to control odor better than a shower with soap alone. 12 hours after a shower, the average men's Grundle odor level was 5 out of 10. With Mando, the average Grundle odor is a 0 out of 10. If you want to try America's #1 whole body deodorant formula right now, you can find them in Walmart, Target, and other retailers across the country for the best deals. Go to shopmando.com. Back to questions. Okay. All right. This is from Foxy at Sly1 Foxy on Twitter. How are you feeling about starting pitchers outside of Imanaga and Steele? Everyone has looked meh or bad so far. I hope Brown starts dominating and earns the 5th spot. I would love Ben Brown to start. That means if he is a starting pitcher, Career Council is convicted enough that he's made substantial improvements. I am all for that. Now, do I look at spring training and how guys are performing as indicators of what's to come? Not really. Not much can be made, in my opinion, of their spring performances. Guys are trying new stuff. We had Jordan Wicks trying new sliders inside to right-handed batters. This is what Jared Willis told us on last week's show. We have guys trying changeups and Justin Steele. This has always been a thing. Pitchers are toying around trying to find some feel for a pitch and a game environment. I really would not make much, if anything, out of this. Especially what sometimes gets lost is that Arizona environments are not conducive to breaking pitches. So guys are trying to perform their best, and they can make the ball spin a certain way. But, you have this Arizona environment that does not necessarily equate the ball spin a certain way. But, you have this Arizona environment that does not necessarily equate the Wrigley Field environment or the other ballparks. So results, don't read too much into it. Read into health, read into velocity spikes. So if they're throwing faster, Brett Keller's throwing faster, read into their conversations with the media, read into how the pitching coaches and the coaching staff talk about it. Now, that being said, if they're out there throwing to the backstop, and of course, that's an extreme, potentially troubling trend, but rarely do you see that happening. Also, too, I think there is some genuine worry, as we alluded to earlier, just about the guy's ability to go deeper into the season. So Shota, 173 innings. Steele did finish strong last season. So I understand some of the yanks about the starting pitching staff, but the hope is that Ben Brown does get some innings. The hope is Jordan Wicks gets some innings. And I feel as if because of the injury last year, understandably so, the enthusiasm around Jordan Wicks has not quite been there. But we're talking about a left-handed pitcher with such a strong foundation in a changeup that escapes right-handed bats, which is very important for lefties, as well as a four-seam fastball that has a shape that suggests value against lefties and righty batters from Jordan Wicks. That's the foundation. Also, throughout his major league career in short spurts, he showed comfort in a cutter or comfort in more of a horizontal pitch inside to righties or escaping lefties. This means he has potential 4+ pitch types. Of all the Cubs pitching prospects, because of the diverse pitch mix he brings, I think I'm still just as optimistic about him as I was a year ago before he hurt his back. So I'm still encouraged by him. I hope he just comes back healthy. I do believe the foundation of the fastball and changeup will give him enough base eventually to find the third pitch and give him maybe a mid-rotation outlook by the end of the year. Okay. This is from Ed Gana, at Ed Gana, Egauna. Should we be worried about the lineup after Happ, Seiya, and Tucker? Maybe. It depends what your outlook is on, Dansby Swanson and what you believe the reason for some of his offensive struggles last season. Let's go look at it. Let's go look at the lineup right now. So Tucker, Happ, Seiya. Who are the other bats? Well, Michael Busch. We just talked about Michael Busch's contact not aligning with his power. Maybe that improves. We have PCA, who had an incredible back end of last year offensively, given what we saw early on. Nico Horner has shown above average offense in the past about 2.5 years. Justin Turner, although 40 years old, had a WRC plus north of 115 in the last 2 years. I don't know if it's scary. We're listing off hitters who were above average offensively as recent as last year. And I get it, we want more power, but let's imagine Tucker is who we think he is. Let's imagine that Seiya is also who we think he is, and Happ is still that consistent guy. Well, it's not really hard to squint and think, okay, well, Nico is going to be an offensive average guy. Dansby Swanson at his 30th percentile outcome is still like hovering at league average offensively. That's 5 bats right there. PCA, he just continues to develop, becomes that superstar. That's 6 bats. And we didn't even talk about Michael Busch, who was above average last year as a rookie, seeing more plate appearances. That's number 7 right there. Then you have Matt Shaw. Then you have the prospect potential. And then importantly, you have the trade deadline. And you have a base of money that they did not spend that is presumably available if they're competitive because they gave Bregman's contract of about $30 million annual average value. That can make up one of those back end of the lineup spots. That's thinking optimistically, but sure. I do think that without Happ, Seiya, and Tucker, the offense has a lot of uncertainty, has a lot of volatility, and requires a lot of improvements to offset some of the concerns we're thinking about right now. Okay. This question is from Modern Boxes, at Modern Boxes. What would you have to see from PCA statistically to move him to leadoff at some point in his career? Or do we even value speed at the top of the lineup anymore compared to just stacking your best producers at the top? PCA PCA needs just to play more baseball. It's not a cop-out question. He was extremely aggressive last year. A chase rate around like 40%. Okay, it's not like at Javi Baez levels per se, but he was aggressive at times. So number one, he needs to not chase that much. Statistical thresholds, I'm picky at leadoff. So I want top 10 percentile guys. I want guys who chase at 20% rates. So I'm asking for PCA to half his chase rate. I don't believe that's likely at all. I would actually be quite surprised if he ever achieves that at any point in his entire career. Does speed have an effect on the bases? Yes, it does. It does have an effect when you can increase your odds of getting to second base, right? Then it also increases the odds of having some type of perturbation for the opposing pitcher because of now the pitcher can't throw to first base more than 2 times, right? So yeah, it probably has an effect. How quantifiable is it is unclear, given PCA is just like a crazy base runner and you don't really see many guys like him, but I'm sure it does have an effect. I just don't think we're going to see him get that spot in the leadoff anytime soon unless he continues to make some rapid developmental changes. Now, that being said, if he's like, a 335 weighted on base average guy, I'm fine just causing chaos at the leadoff spot. I really am. I think the lineup decisions, as Craig Counsell has said, is kind of overblown. I think there could be an opportunity for him to do it. I just give it like maybe a 1% chance from day one. Okay. This is from W. Collins Cubs at _Cubby 1998. His question, a lot of lefties in the rotation, not a lot in the bullpen. What do you think of the league's impression of Cubs pitching staff will be? The lefty discussion in the bullpen keeps coming up. I understand it. It's basically Caleb Thielbar and that's it, right? From a lefty point of view. Let's put ourselves back into the last 2 years in the bullpen. Remember when Leiter was coming out of the bullpen and at times pitching 2 innings? The reason that was happening is because he had that splitter. That splitter evades left-handed bats. He's a right-handed pitcher, Leiter was. There's pitch types that, although they're right-handed pitchers, they have success against lefties. Julian Merriweather is a perfect example. So his slider is very tight. It's kind of that north to south profile. Somewhat similar to Ben Brown's pitch. Different in some aspects, but similar in concept. It just kind of goes straight down. The advantage of having a pitch type like that is it does well against lefties. So let's say Merriweather does look like his former self from 2023. He's a lefty guy in my book. Now you look at Ben Brown. Let's say he's on the roster. Well, he looks like Julian Merriweather with that same north-to-south pitch. Those are 3 lefty outgetters. Remember changeup or splitter? Eli Morgan has been what's described as a Bugs Bunny changeup because of its uniqueness that evades left-handed bats. That's 4 guys right there. So I think they have the guys to get the outs. The traditional lefty-lefty mashup, yeah, you want to have guys like that, of course, because even without the stuff, those handedness tend to lend to getting guys out. I understand that. But the Cubs do have pitch types that should get lefties out, even if they're not lefty per se. Question from Shani Johnson is a pro at Commander_Yellow. What do you think the plan is for Alcantara, Casey, and Moises? And similarly, from Cassie Tompkins, she asked, top prospects, minus Shaw, we are most likely to see on the big league roster this year. Alcantara, Casey, Ballesteros, etc. Okay, so I folded those 2 questions into one. Alcantara is probably going to get maybe the first shot from that bunch we just talked about, minus Shaw, outfield depth. So they signed Travis Jankowski, right? So they are looking at outfield depth. What does Kevin Alcantara provide? Outfield depth. He can play center field. He can play right field. Who have we seen play center field recently? We've seen Seiya Suzuki and we've seen Ian Happ play center field in spring training. Kevin Alcantara has more recent time in center field. Just from the defensive value alone is probably going to get him the first shot. Casey is just, the groin injury is unfortunate. I was hoping we would see more of him. And from talking with Greg Huss and Greg Zumack and Brian Smith, I think mentally I kind of just like undervalued his defensive potential. From all reports, he's very competent. Owen Casey is in the outfield. So disappointed that he's injured, and with him, it's going to be just more of a wait and feel game and see how the roster shapes out as he's injured, if there's room for him. So there's really no gas with Owen Casey. James Triantos, I love James Triantos. He's that mold of baseball player where he makes a lot of contact, but he makes surprisingly hard contact for a small frame. And so in some ways, it's reminiscent of like a hybrid of Nico and Matt Shaw, just because we're thinking about those two. I would probably give James Triantos a leg up of Owen Casey just because of the injury concern with Casey's groin. And then for Moises Ballesteros, I think there is just like a defensive position, right? So first base, although Bush is slotted in there, we have Justin Turner at first base. If there's some regression from Bush, maybe they want to get more offensive firepower and are comfortable with Ballesteros at first base. Maybe there's a need defensively, a catcher, if, knock on wood, Amaya gets injured or Kelly gets injured, they're kind of in an emergency situation, or maybe they just want offense, they bring enough to DH, but there doesn't seem to be an immediate need for Ballesteros as much as maybe for Alcantara at center field. Okay. Next question from Tim Powers at Tim Powers 1974. If the Cubs are not looking like serious World Series contenders at the trade deadline, should they trade Kyle Tucker? And he says, yes, they should. If they're not serious contenders, you have to increase your odds of winning a World Series. So if your odds of winning a World Series 2025 is like less than 0.1%, then you need to increase your odds of winning the World Series next year, which means him as a trade candidate probably does make some sense, unfortunately. Now we're jumping the gun here. Let's enjoy Kyle Tucker on the Cubs. And this is a conversation that is probably stupid, right? And I love you, Tim. But it's kind of a stupid question because we're assuming a lot of bad stuff's going to happen. And baseball naturally is so stupid that you can't really predict anything in the first 80 games with any confidence. So, the question I'd throw back to you is what if we trade for Vladdy for first base? Like the same probability of the Cubs tanking is the same probability of them being a 100-win team. So if you're going to be imagining trading Kyle Tucker, then honestly, there's the same chance you should be thinking about trading for Vladdy. And then you can start psychoanalyzing yourself. Why are you thinking about trading Kyle Tucker if you have the same chance of winning 100 games and trading for Vladdy Guerrero Jr.? Little introspection for you over there, okay? What else do we have here? This question is from Michael Bracey at Bracey Mike. What are your thoughts on next year's right fielder Alcantara? Okay. So I did not include this in the previous question about the prospects because I want to focus more so on what Alcantara has done in AAA and personally what I would like to see as a fan. What he's done well in AAA is what we've seen in the early stints in spring training. He is super fast. His athletic frame is obvious. He's like 6'6". He kind of has that Fernando Tatis wiry build. You can just imagine that turning into value. He's shown some power. Shows some speed to be the best. No, I'm not going to do that. But he's also shown, unfortunately, at times, a tendency to miss. So if you look at his contact rate in AAA, just under 73%. I just talked about Michael Busch's contact rate at the big league level being just under 75% and how I need him to hit for more power, right? The same can be said about Alcantara, but in a more extreme fashion. I need Alcantara to not whiff against 27% of pitches at AAA. Because in my mind, I think, okay, what happens if he enters the big leagues with a tendency to whiff that much? You see better stuff. We talk about stuff plus, pitching bot, Thomas Nestico's model. All of these run value prediction models. They're made because they're accurate and because their stuff is so good, and their stuff is better than what you see in AAA. So in my mind, I kind of just like insert Alcantara into the big league roster with more whiffs, with like a 30% whiff rate. And if that happens, he needs to be a 30 plus home run guy. And so the question is, well, can he do that right now? The answer is probably not. This means he needs to develop, and he needs to expose some of the weaknesses at the big league level to adapt. That's what PCA did last year. PCA was called up not because he earned it, according to Correct Counsel, but because Cody Bellinger broke his rib. And PCA was also making around 74% contact in AAA. So we saw the concerns, if you want to call them concerns, even though they were not concerns, at the back end of 23 in his brief, like 2 weeks worth of at-bats, where he just had no base hits. And then he went to the offseason. PCA, if you look at his profile last year, I'm going to show a graph of just whiff rate over time throughout the season of every single Cubs batter. Look at the pink line when I throw this graph right here, okay? Wrong graph. Where is this graph? I don't have it up. I'll throw it up in about 2 seconds. So I'll explain it before I throw it up here. So this graph is representing, here it is. Let me throw this up. Is representing adjustment phases, okay? So here's the pink line I'm talking about. See how it starts low, goes way up, goes back down again, and goes back up again. So he started, when he was called up, with a swinging strike rate around 10%. I'm thinking, oh my God, PCA adapted. He's making more contact at the big league level than he did in AAA. I was incredibly impressed. Then they sent him back down. I was not happy. I thought he was making noticeable improvements. He gets called back up 10 days later. The whiff rate spikes up, goes from 10% to 20%. And I'm thinking, damn, he has to adjust again. So what does he do? He incorporates a leg kick right by the All-Star break. What happens? Whiff rate goes down, offense goes up, power goes up. He went through multiple different adjustment phases. The first one was exposure in September of 2023. That inspired a batting mechanical stance change that he went into 2024. Okay? Gets called up, uses those changes, hits his first hit as a home run, and then he has some struggles with that. Goes back down, comes back up, incorporates a leg kick. That's the second adjustment he made in about like a 6-month span. Start seeing more pitches, right? The whiff rate did go back up, but it's this constant refinement phase. And then he's still showing the refinement phase. So look at this right here. This is cool. On the left is PCA in spring training when he hit a Little League home run with 2 strikes versus last year, his very last base hit with 2 strikes. See on the left, look at the bat angle. Look at that bat angle on the left. It's perpendicular. Look at the depth of his batting stance. He's lower in his stance. Now, if I were to play this video, which I'm not going to, but if I were to play this video, you would notice he doesn't even take a leg stride there. On the right, he was taking a leg stride. So we're talking about PCA toying with, yet again, another adjustment. This is what I would like Kevin Alcantara to go through, that iteration process. For him to do that, you need big league playing time. You need to get at-bats, but you also need to win games. It's this dynamic that has to be played out by Correct Counsel, and that's why he's hired. Okay, this is from Scott Goldenzoff, at Scott Goldenzoff. Try to predict who has the most plate appearances, 1 through 12. I want to get through these last 7 questions here, so I'm going to go pretty fast here. 1 to 12, here we go. Tucker, Happ, Dansby, Seiya, Nico, Bush, Turner, Shaw, Birdie, Amaya, Kelly, and then Workman. Let's go with those top 12. Tucker, best hitter on the team. Correct Counsel will give him the most at-bats somehow. That's the way I look at it. Tweet from Jinja Nation at the Jinja80. Did you do graphs and keep track of stats as a kid? I'm going to be fast here. I want to be clear. I'm not a numbers guy. And I swear to God, I'm not a numbers guy. I'm more baseball than everyone at the All-City network, including Denver, Philly, all those guys. No one played baseball like I played baseball. Cody, Corey, Luke, they sit in those chairs pontificating about baseball. I'm the ones on the backfield sneaking in some chew as a 13-year-old, okay? I'm more baseball than anyone on this network. I just happen to fall into numbers. I don't know how it happened. I honestly think what happened was when I was playing, junior high and high school, I wanted to be so good. And fortunately, I'm talking to you guys, so it didn't work. But I would like obsess over like Manny Ramirez's swing. I would obsess over like A-Rod's swing. And so I think over time, I just I wanted to understand why they were so good. And then you're on internet forums. I was on Pro Sports Daily for since I was 11 years old, and you just kind of learn about stuff. So for me, it was mashing the visualization, like watching baseball so much with like a quantifiable source to match what I was seeing that was really intriguing. And then it just kind of took off, But I'm not a numbers guy at all. I'm more baseball than all you folks out there. Okay, what do we got here? Eric at EWB1215 to the Cubs sign David Robertson, just in case. Doubtful. I don't know what David Robertson's market is. Man, I think some folks were thinking he would get $10 million before spring training started. Obviously, that's not happened. So maybe it goes down. The Cubs kind of snag him. The Cubs have, as we talked about early in the episode, a ton of guys without options. So you sign Robertson. That's great. Maybe 5, 6, 7 million. But at the same time, is that money best served once you have an idea of what you got? Because you may need that money, the trade deadline. And so you may not want to spend that right now. So I think they're not going to do that. All right. This is from our Discord, Carlos, diehard fan. Carlos, can we get a breakdown of the top 3 for that last spot in the rotation? Assad, Wicks, and Ray. What makes each unique? I'm really curious with Assad. I don't see anything that's dominant. Is it sequencing or something that can't be seen by the naked eye? Okay. As I said, I'm not a numbers guy. I'm going to show a lot of numbers over here. Okay. What makes Colin Ray unique? What makes Colin Ray unique and Javier Assad unique specifically is for Assad unclear. It's not a cop-out, but his stuff doesn't grade well. What he has is a cutter, slider, sinker, four seam that plays off each other. And so when I try to reduce everything into just basically 2 numbers, he looks like he's within the normal distribution of most pitchers from stuff like perspectives. So nothing really stands out. From Colin Ray, I think it's the $5 million. And I also think it's the stamina he showed last year. So I'm showing a graph here. This is Colin Ray's outing over time in 2024. On the y-axis is velocity. If you notice, his velocity steadily got higher as the season went along. He pitched a lot of innings and he threw faster as the season went along. So I think that's really what it is. He's like an innings guy that also has interesting stuff, splitter, sweeper as well. Now, you didn't mention Brad Keller. So I'm going to use a minute here to talk about Brad Keller. He is unique. So I'm going to show this graph here. You don't need to know what any of these numbers mean. Okay, so if you're looking at all these numbers and you're kind of overwhelmed, forget about it. All you need to know is that each dot you're looking at is one pitcher. And specifically what you need to focus on is the middle of all these dots. The closer you are to the middle, the more similar you are to other pitchers. The further away from that middle, the further towards the edges, the more dissimilar you are. So you have gray dots, you have red dots. Each are a pitcher. See the red dot on the left? Well, that's Brad Keller. He's on the edge. Why is he on the edge? Brad Keller is on the edge because of a very high vertical release point with unique cut ride profile. And doing this, throwing 94 miles per hour last year. Guess what? He's throwing 96 to 97 with those similar traits. No one does that. So he is an outlier by definition. Now, the question with Brad Keller is the velocity enough to offset some of the breaking stuff that he had trouble with last year? And you also notice on this list, close to Brad Keller is Kyle Bradish. They throw very similar fastballs. Now, with Kyle Bradish, he has a curveball that's north to south. Keller does not have that. So I was thinking they may try to add that, but I don't think we've seen that in spring. If he has, I just haven't noticed it. So, for what they're thinking, they may try something else, but the velocity in that fastball shape is really intriguing. And I think he's going to start. I think they may give him the first nod of that rotation, especially with Javier Assad injured. Okay. This is from Radio Maverick from Discord. What are you most excited to see this year? For me, it's pretty simple. It's just the younger guys, specifically PCA. I mean, we're talking about a 5+4 guy. I just went through those different mechanical changes. The guy is adapting very, 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 very fast. He's very smart too. PCA, you can tell by the way he talks about the game, how his teammates talk about him. I'm just ecstatic to see what he looks like. And then separately, it's Wicks. I talked about Wicks earlier in the episode. I still think those 4 pitch types and then some, plus 4 pitch types, lends well to value. And then also seeing similarly aged Ben Brown, and hopefully he's healthy with that curveball, or death ball rather. And then also Cade Horton, get healthy, top pitching prospect in the Cubs system, also has that unique fastball shape. Would love for him to be healthy and showcase that top prospect status. And then lastly, this is from Vanilla Shield before I sign off here. Vanilla Shield asked, Brandon Burcell breakdown if he will be on the roster this year. Can Kevin Alcantara also be the 4th outfielder, or will he be getting sent back to AAA for everyday play? Talked a lot about Kevin Alcantara. Probably going to start in AAA if they want to keep Travis Jankowski. We'll see. Or if, they may just have to keep Gage Workman and not go with the outfielder, which is why Ian Happ and Seiya are playing center field. Brandon Burcell. Okay. This is from friend Thomas Nestico. This is his graph. I did not make this graph. Go follow him on Twitter, please. Give him all the shout outs. He does phenomenal stuff. Okay. What makes Brandon Burcell good? This is his pitch profile. Pink fastballs, teal breakers, and then a more north to south curveball looking pitch. So fastball, cutter, and then more of like a north-south breaking pitch. It's one straight line down, okay, with extension that is short, which is weird. You don't want short extension, but he has short extension. So why is he good? Well, he has a north to south profile with 3 pitch types that are disparate with apparently great command. That's interesting, right? The question is, how well can those pitch types play up against big league hitters? And that's to be determined. You don't see many guys, right-handed pitchers, with this like north to south profile like he does. So it's very intriguing for sure. Guys kind of come out of nowhere and they figure it out, and maybe Burcell is that guy. And anyone who has 3 pitch types with such separation like that and command deserves our attention, no doubt. And it's not the numbers and the success he's had in AAA. It's the malleability that major league coaches can work with to get him to a better point that he's currently at. And that's what's intriguing about Brandon Burcell, I think. Now, it's very different. I always want to put this caveat out there. It's very different than saying, oh, well, he has good stuff, so he's going to be good. That's not true. You need the complete package. And it's not even saying he's going to be good. It's more accurate to talk about the potential to be good and playing your cards and getting as many bets as possible so that your pitching is good. I'm going to lose my voice over here. I'm dead. I'm going to crack open the Gatorade or something like that, and non-sponsorship for Gatorade, by the way, and try to recover. But that's kind of what I have for you guys. A lot of questions, apparently, about the depth and the starting pitching and the prospects, understandably so. But it's going to be an interesting next few weeks, how Craig makes those decisions and how the domestic opening day series roster looks and how PCA continues to adapt. And maybe we do see more Brad Keller with all the hype that we've seen so far. So that being said, the guys will be back on Monday for a show. Corey will be back with me next Thursday. We'll get back at it. Enjoy spring. Enjoy these Mesa days. Get out to Mesa if you haven't already. It's beautiful to watch a game. And if there's breaking news, if there's anything that deserves our attention, we can jump on at moment's notice. Otherwise, we will catch you next week. And Corey and I will be back next Friday. Thank you for listening. And as always, go Cubs.
We all silly like the mayor.